Last week, I shared how instead of helping buyers and sellers, Redfin was to become the tour guide for climate change. This week, Redfin goes even deeper on a political agenda, and I just don't understand. They disguise it as real estate news. It's not, and I'm going to show you how. Before we get into that, let's go through the market statistics on where the market is today, and then we'll take a look at what Redfin is trying to sell you on. So the big news this past week was, I think, interest rates jumped up. They've been between all year long between 6 and 7%, and then all of a sudden this last period of time have jumped up above 7 for the last 10 days or so, and then last week closed at a new high at 7.37%. Now, is that significant? The distinction from 7.37 to 7 in itself isn't such a big deal, but what is a big deal is at some point it starts to wear down the energy on the buyer side. That extra payment keeps going up, and eventually some buyers say, not for me, and it starts to have an effect. I believe we're having that effect now. The market's still very strong, just not as red hot as it was, say, 2 months ago. If it continues to go up, and this is a sign of continued increases, that's a problem. As of now, there's no such indication. We are where we are, and the interest rates still create room for a healthy market for both buyers and sellers, given where rates are right now. Now, of course, the press wants to talk about it's a 20-year high, and that's the emphasis they're going to make on it. But I would say the real point is rates have been creeping up all year, and it's starting to have an effect on the buyer demand. So I would say there's two effects on the market. There's the buyer side, which is demand, and supply is sellers. The other one is inventory is sellers. And still, inventory is at all-time record low. So while sales might be slowing down, and at some point it might affect price increasing more slowly, there are not enough houses to create a housing crash. That's off the table. You can see here we have lowest housing inventory, homes for sale, of any time in history, below the pandemic period, below the previous pandemic period by 50%. There's not enough homes for sale for there to be a market crash. Now, what does that mean in our market? Well, in Los Angeles, one of the great tools I use is Altos Research, and they show the market has moved from a 44 to 43. It's still a seller's market, barely, and it's cooled down a bit. And one of the key indicators, if you look at per square foot, so this is what you pay to get a square foot of an average house in the market, is now down to 824. It was as high as 860 back in June. And you can see the trend line is down. So the value of a square foot of house is starting to go down in the Los Angeles market, and that's a sign the market's cooling. Now, traditionally it cools off in the wintertime. This is a little early. So I'm not sure what the future holds. Of course, there's a lot of potential change in economics, but as of right now, that's the main factor. Okay, for those of you who are in the real estate industry or invest in the stock market or just are interested in statistics, one of the best things I saw last week, not related to the real estate market, but to the industry, was a presentation by Mike Del Pret at the Inman Connect conference. And there he compares the current housing market industry to the transition from Blockbuster to Netflix. And if you remember, I was a parent at the time of a young child. Blockbuster was like Disneyland. You took your kid to Blockbuster, you bought him you rented one or two movies for a couple bucks, you bought some popcorn or candy for $5, and it was like heaven to little kids. And it's gone. And why is it gone? It's because Netflix economically destroyed them. And it wasn't even that much per movie. I mean, I think Blockbuster was $2 or $3 a movie at most, and the experience of going there. But the economic difference was so great, it destroyed that industry. If you want to see what's happening in the real estate industry, click on this email, or down below I have the link as well, and you can see Mike Del Pret's presentation at Inman Connect, and he'll be speaking at the EXPCon as well. Fascinating video, absolutely fascinating. Now, let's go forward and talk about Redfin for the week. Redfin has, I think, two political diatribes on their website. Now, I'm not against people being in politics. I used to be in politics. I just don't want to merge the politics with my business. I don't see, my customers don't want it. People want me to sell them a house or help them through probate. They don't want to hear my political point of view. So I'm not here to argue the politics. What I am here to do is to point out, though, that Redfin is attempting to kind of fool you into their political point of view. And I think we call that propaganda when you misuse data and speak from a position of authority that you haven't earned to make a political position. I think we call that propaganda. I want to show you 2 examples of that. The first one seems innocuous enough. The typical teacher can afford just 12% of the homes for sale near their school, down from 30% in 2019. Wow, that sounds bad. It sounds terrible. Who doesn't love teachers? My wife was a teacher. My mom was a teacher. Who doesn't love teachers? Sounds bad. But when you get into it, there's a few things I think that are wrong. The first thing that's wrong is the typical teacher now, at least in California, more and more works at a charter school that pays less than a public school, or works for a homeschool situation. A private school situation. They pay a lot less. My wife taught at both private schools and charter schools. They pay a lot less. Now you go there because you believe in the mission as a teacher, but they get paid a lot less. They don't get the benefits. And so as more students go out of, and here's a great chart I saw from the NEA, I'm sorry, where was this from? This is from, I didn't save that for the video. I'm sorry. Oh, here it is. Here's a chart that shows LAUSD, even though our population of kids is going up, LAUSD students are going down, enrollment's going down. And why is that? More and more kids are in in private school, where the salaries are less. So when you talk about the average teacher, of course, their salaries are less. If more teachers are private than public, they get less money. That's the first point. Number 2 is, when you talk about teachers' salaries, they uniquely have non-salary compensation that very few people in our economy have. Unless you work for the government, you probably don't have a pension plan anywhere near the golden plan the teachers have. And unless you work for the government, you probably don't have a health care plan as fantastic as theirs. And so while their salaries might be less than some people in the marketplace, when you put it all together, their package is phenomenal, unbelievable. And they use the number of an entry-level teacher. What they don't do is realize that teachers who stay there for years get extra certifications and different bonuses and points, and that raises their salary up significantly to be able to afford homes in Los Angeles. So I don't think that we're doing a fair apples to apples when we talk about salaries of teachers. In fact, overall in the United States, according to Pew Research, most workers' wages have been stagnant. And we know that most people can't buy houses. There's an affordability crisis. So to say that teachers are in the same problem isn't really unique or special. It's just they use the article to generate sympathy. Oh, these people can't afford homes. They're teachers. They're underpaid. Well, everybody's underpaid if you use a measure of housing. Why single out teachers? And I'll get to why I think it is later on. There's another reason why I think the teachers deserve a little less sympathy on this issue, which is teachers are the most powerful proponent of the policies leading to housing affordability problems, meaning in California, they run our state. The teachers union runs the legislature. They run the Democratic Party. In LA, they basically handpicked the mayor. Every council member is basically with the teacher union approval. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. You make your own judgment. I'm just saying if you run the city, county, and state, and maybe powerful in the country as well, you lose the right to complain about housing affordability since you're the ones driving the policies that make housing unaffordable. And that's my real complaint, I think, with the teachers overall. That article's not nearly as bad as I think the next one from a political point of view. Redfin has a survey. I love their surveys. It's such, who do they ask? 40% respondents who reside in Texas and Florida would prefer living somewhere else, is what they're not saying, somewhere else, where abortion's legal. Now, think about that for a second. Just think of the logic. They're saying people live in a state and wish they could live somewhere else just because of abortion. Is that true? I think people say that, but based on statistics, I think you would imagine, again, I'm not here debating abortion, good or bad, but I think you'd imagine the country's fairly split. There are states that support abortion limitations, states that don't. Nationally, based on Congress, based on elections, it's about 50-50. And yet more people are moving from states with very generous abortion policies, California, New York, and Illinois, to states more restrictive. These states they're citing, Florida and Texas. So why is it that if people in Texas and Florida want to live somewhere else, more people are moving in those states than out of those states. So obviously something's going on here. When you read this data analyst, these people, point of view, she says a couple of things I think are just unbelievable. One thing she says is that specifically people who want more abortion, they put up living in Florida and Texas because the compromise of that housing affordability. So they'd have you believe that there's nobody living in California or New York that wants to restrict abortion that's living there because of their reasons, family, job, or whatever. It's only true in Texas or Florida, they would have you believe. But I think it's even worse than that, because then they go on and say, and some of these people, if you read the article, I think it's worth reading, choose to live in neighborhoods in these anti-abortion states, and they flock together based on signs in front of the homes. Now, we've all seen political signs. We tend to see them in election periods. Like in my neighborhood, we have a lot of signs during the election. There's none right now. This lady would have you believe that people are choosing where to live, only in Florida, Texas, to congregate together all the pro-abortion people, and they're putting signs out in order to congregate together for their mutual pleasure. Is there anybody in Florida, Texas that lives in a neighborhood that they put signs up, hey, we want more abortion rights, please live in our neighborhood? Is that really, has anybody besides me think that's just nonsense? Has anybody here seen that? Because she quotes, it's so funny, these data analysts, translation BS, she quotes the chief economist of Redfin, Chief Economist Darryl Fairweather, who sounds very important when he says things like, even many parts of Florida, Texas have attracted an influx of migrants who've pushed up prices. They're less expensive. I'm sorry, one more. I put it in the wrong spot. Oh, he says, people often self-sort into areas where their neighbors have similar social and political views. Liberal people who live in Texas or Florida may choose a home in a neighborhood where they see flags that speak to their beliefs. Now, he's the chief economist being quoted by a data analyst. There's no data. Like, are there more such signs in Dallas and in wherever in Florida than there is in California and New York? Are there such signs? There's no picture of such signs. Did they count the signs? Again, my contention is not pro or against abortion. It's these people using fake data, fake arguments to push their political agenda, which really, I don't even care if they do it elsewhere in what used to be a great real estate resource, Redfin. I used to read Redfin's blog, every single blog, because it was informative, it was helpful to understand the real estate market. And today, and this is the latest example, it has just become a political advocacy for one side of the debate. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm speaking as a professional who wishes that they would use all their data and activity for good in real estate rather than good or bad, however you want to judge it, in politics. I don't care about the political side of this. I care about the business side. And they're just not doing their job. And that's maybe one of the reasons why Redfin, which used to be growing astronomically, has been struggling over the last few years. So what do you do? One thing I would say is whenever you're looking to buy or sell, we want to look at the data. We want to pull the comparable sales, the trend lines in that area, trend lines in that neighborhood, that condo project, and don't get caught up in the hype that you read on these websites, because they have their own issue. It has nothing to do with you. In fact, in Redfin's case, I left this out. I suspect the reason is Redfin's going from being an underdog internet startup to now there's another corporate Wall Street bully. And what they're going to do, for example, they're pairing up with Zillow to now try to corner the market on new builder home data. In years past, regulators would say, hey, you two can't get together. There's no competition. That's antitrust violation. That's not good for the public. But if Redfin's big enough and they support the right politicians in the right areas, they know they can get away with whatever policies they want. They've seen Zillow do it, they've seen Amazon do it, and they see Google do it. So what does it mean for you? Be careful what you read. Look at the data, talk to professionals. And if I can help you planning to buy or sell or build your business or grow your business, let's talk if I can help at all. I'm at Bill Gross Probate on all social media. Call, text, or email me, and make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.